专业的。
这样有对吗？画面
还可以吗？网络还可以吗？
网络可以，画面。你要点那个。
就是那个点击。
Which one is it? I don't know. I always get confused. And then it's Championship Memorial Hall.
We have been here.
Yeah. This is really like the prime location. And this view is
可以看到这个。
这个是南车的。
各位贵宾，大家早安！我们的论坛即将于3分钟后准时开始，邀请所有贵宾尽速入座，谢谢大家。Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the forum today. The forum is about to begin in 3 minutes. We invite each and every one of you to be seated. Thank you very much.
报名有行程来了。
直播 OK 吗？你要看那个画面。我现在好奇怪哦，那个 FB 不见了，我们刚是直播。
It's just for my rent.
Okay.
Very much appreciated.
要留那个直播的。现在点那个还是都是这个所以你要点这个。现在直播的这个。哦，好。那个我应该要把它删掉。但是你这样只是看到谁的背，我要再用过来一点。对。那我们就开始。好，10分可以开始。如果你直播就是后来最多的人数，可以跟我说一下，就我希望需要一些人数。
各位贵宾，大家早安！ 欢迎莅临2023台德气候政策与碳定价论坛。Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the 2023 Taiwan-Germany Climate Policy and Carbon Pricing Forum. 2050净零碳排是全球共同面对的严峻挑战，希望透过一整天精彩的议题讨论与论坛，不只能持续推动台德双边合作，更能以德国的气候政策及碳定价为镜，整合国内外专家学者的宝贵意见，推动台湾气候政策与碳定价制度朝低碳经济的未来迈进。Net zero emissions by 2050 is undoubtedly a global challenge. For our forum today, we invited experts from Taiwan and from Germany across public, industrial, and academic sectors with the goal of not only strengthening Taiwan-Germany bilateral relations, but also to learn from Germany's climate policies and carbon pricing strategies, promote and implement a carbon neutrality blueprint in Taiwan, and work towards a net zero emission future. 那么在这边提醒大家，各位桌上的环保杯是可以环保回收的材质，在我们离开论坛之前，请帮我们做回收。Just a little reminder for you, all of the cups today at the forum, they are recyclable, so please recycle it to our staff before leaving the forum today. 那么各位呢，如果手上有拿到口译机的话，我们口译机的耳机需要插入之后才能开启。频道1是音进中，频道2是中进音，那么也在离开论坛前记得归还哦。And another little reminder, the interpreting machine, if you have received it, the headphones need to be plugged in for it to be turned on. Channel 1 is English to Mandarin and Channel 2 is Mandarin to English. And please return to our staff before leaving the forum today. 那么在论坛的最一开始呢，我们即将进行开幕致辞。To commence the forum today, it's our honor to have for opening remarks the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Environment, Dr. 施文珍。那么我们开幕致辞很荣幸邀请到环境部政务次长施文珍施政务次长为我们进行致辞，掌声欢迎。
Good morning 好，各位早。我们这个 German Institute Taipei 的 Deputy Director Mr. Coleman， 还有我们来自德国的2位专家Dr. Muller and Professor Dr. Daniel. Sorry for skipping your last name because I hope that I will not be, but I hope I won't mispronounce your beautiful last name. 还有我们各位这个与会的专家学者气候署的同仁，大家早安哈。很开心今天有这个机会可以来参加这个论坛。那本人这个代表环保署环境部来参加今天的论坛。那也很荣幸有各位贵宾跟专家学者的参与。那也特别的谢谢我们2位源自德国的这个排放交易管理局的先进来跟我们分享德国跟欧盟的气候政策，还有这个针对亚洲碳定价的研究成果。那我国跟德国在2018年的5月有签订台的排放交易合作意向宣言。好，那我们双方也以互访的方式在推动碳排交易制度上面做政策经验的分享跟交流。2020年因为疫情的关系，以视讯方式推动。今年很开心我们可以回到以视频的方式来进行交流。那台湾身为我们国际社会的一份子，也积极的呼应全球的减碳行动，为这个符合巴黎协定做出符合我国的这个自主减碳贡献。那今年2月，我们的行政院核定了净零排放路径112到115的纲要计划。那这份计划是由本部、经济部、交通部等9大政府部门联合提出，那包括了56项子计划。那这个期程一共为期4年。计划的主要目标是为了实现2050的净零碳排。那计划中有5个工作圈，包括去碳能源产业及能源效率、绿运输以及运具的电气化、负碳技术以及治理。 那这些工作圈会针对近零碳排的目标采取相对应的减缓跟调试的措施。有鉴于近零排放已经成为各国政府跟产业的一个共识哈，所以我国的政府也已经迅速的展开行动，来确保我们的产业跟相关的领域可以跟国际接轨，那以实现这个我们的永续发展目标。那因此呢，在这个气候法制的基础上面，今年1月10号，立法院3读通过了将温室气体减量及管理法修正为气候变迁因应法。随后呢，在2月15号总统公布，那气候法正式生效。那气候法成为台湾实现2050净零目标当中最重要的一个气候治理法源。修正的重点包括将2050的净零减碳目标入法，确立各部会的选择，增列公正转型，强化排放管制以及诱因机制，以促进减量。另外，也可以由法院来征收碳费做专款专用，也增订了气候调试的专章，纳入碳足迹管理以及碳产品标示，并且强化资讯公开以及公众参与等等。为了达成温室气体的长期减量目标，推动碳定价的机制是重要的策略。后续我们将分阶段的征收碳费，并且规划多元的减量诱因机制。碳费的征收对象，若因为转换低碳燃料，采行负排放技术，提升能源效率，使用再生能源或者是制成等等，可以改善温室气体减量措施，并且达成指定的减量目标，可以提出自主减量计划，并因此来申请合并优惠的费率。那碳费的征收将纳入温室气体管理基金，作为专款专用，使用在中央以及地方政府推动温室气体减量以及调试。希望透过今天的论坛，我们可以更加了解国际碳定价的做法最新的动向。那也很谢谢这个与会的这个国内外的专家学者，透过今天的论坛，可以提供我国碳定价制度一些宝贵的建议。那我们很诚挚的欢迎大家，无论是在实体或者是在线上，可以踊跃提问，跟本场论坛的国内外专家进行交流，共同为我们台湾的碳定价措施集思广益。那这次的论坛，我相信将有助于拟定出符合我国，并且可以与国际接轨的碳定价政策与措施。我们期待台湾跟德国之间能够持续就这个议题以及更广义的气候变迁还有环保的议题上进行长期的合作，以携手因应气候变迁的关键的议题。那最后我们祝这次的论坛圆满成功，大家身体健康，谢谢。
谢谢，谢谢新闻科技长给大家的努力，全军的支持。Coming up next, it's also our honor to invite for opening remarks the Deputy Director General of German Institute Taipei, Mr. Andreas Offen。那么接下来我们也很荣幸邀请到德国在台协会的副代表何峰副代表，欢迎。
Deputy Minister Shi, Dr. Landgräbe, I pronounced the last name. Dr. Klingenfeld, representing the Federal Agency for the Environment, distinguished guests, researchers, officials, experts, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my honor and pleasure to join the 2023 Taiwan-Germany Climate Policy and Carbon Pricing Forum, organized by the Ministry of Environment. Taiwan and Germany have been enjoying a fruitful cooperation in many fields for many years now, and these span the fields of research, smart machinery, green energy policy, human rights, justice cooperation, and so on and so forth. But we also strive to deepen our exchange on the climate crisis, as I want to call it, and efforts to tackle this global challenge. Germany has pledged to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 65% until 2030, and at least 88% until 2040 compared to 1990 levels. Emissions trading is a key instrument, of course, for reaching these goals. By putting a price on CO2 emissions and setting legal standards for greater innovation and investment, we intend to achieve our emissions reduction targets in a manner that is both economically sustainable and socially equitable. Taiwan passed its CO2 Greenhouse Gas Emissions Reduction Act in 2015. The law sets Taiwan's 2050 emission reduction target at 50% of the level of 2005. So it's our common ambition to reach a more sustainable economic growth model. And that has opened many opportunities for exchange and cooperation. In 2018, Germany and Taiwan signed a memorandum of understanding on carbon markets and on the development and implementation of an emission trading system. In 2019 and again this year, the Taiwanese delegation traveled to Germany and visited the Federal Agency for the Environment to learn about Germany's experience. So it is very remarkable to see that the Ministry of Environment has organized yet another round of this workshop here and has invited 2 outstanding experts from Germany to participate. I'm looking forward to see more cooperation in this field, and we at the German Institute stand ready to support you. On behalf of the German Institute, I wish all of you constructive, fruitful, and inspiring exchanges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Rockman, please come to the center of the stage for a little bit because we will have a group photo now. 那我们现在呢来到了大合照的时间，在这边再次邀请到环境部次长施文珍施次长，以及环境部气候变迁署署长蔡玲仪蔡署长。For the group photo, it's our honor to invite on stage our head of Division 5 of UBA Director of DHSC, Dr. Jorgen Winkler. And it's also our honor to invite the head of Department B3 of DHSC, Dr. Daniel Klingenfeld. 那么接下来呢，我们也很荣幸邀请到环境部气候变迁署副署长黄伟明黄副署长，有请来到台上进行合照。非常欢迎各位长官级贵宾的莅临，让我们在这边呢邀请我们在前2排的贵宾，请帮我们都移步到台上来进行大合照。是我们摄影师有测试过，合照大家都可以入镜，大家不用担心哦，请到舞台上来。好的。好，那我们摄影师这个画面还 OK 吗 ？OK， 那请看向摄影师 ，Please look towards the camera。3、2、1。好，我们是不是比个赞呢 ？Please give your thumbs up to our photographer。3、2、1。
好，谢谢。
好的，谢谢大家，请回座了。Thank you very much. Please return to your seats. Our photographer will have another group photo with all of our guests today from the center of the stage. 那我们接下来呢，大家请先回座，因为我们摄影师呢会从我们舞台中央由上往下来帮我们贵宾以及所有莅临的嘉宾都拍一张大合照，捕捉这个珍贵的画面呢。好，我们摄影师辛苦了。好的 ，Please look towards our photographer. 3、2、1。Say cheese, please. 3、2、1。好的，谢谢 ，Thank you very much。谢谢我们摄影师哦。那接下来呢，事不宜迟，马上就来进行第一个议题。那我们的主题呢是55套案欧洲气候政策之进展。For our first topic today.
Wolfram and Anita. It's great to be here, and we like it very much, the close cooperation with Taiwan. And as I'm introduced for the first presentation, together with my colleague Daniel, I have the pleasure to talk about the European and German climate protection policy. But I would also recall that we have already a very good close cooperation of the UBA. The UBA is the German Environment Agency, so we are not a governmental body, we are a scientific agency consulting our ministries in Germany and closely cooperate with research institutes in Germany, Europe. So we already have a networking in the context fighting climate change. You know, fighting climate change is a global issue, and the solution is cooperation. Also together with institutions all over the world, like in Taiwan, we had good cooperation in the past with ITRI. The first meeting with the ministries from Taiwan happened 15 years ago in 2008, and almost every year we have cooperation within international congresses and also bilateral meetings, as we have heard already from Dr. Wolfram and the Deputy Minister. So it's a great pleasure to talk now about the recent developments in Germany that is part of the EU since many years. And you see that we have a new program. Yeah, this is the one. That's called Fit for 55 in Europe. And what does it mean? Fit for 55 is actually comprehensive policy. Sorry about that. Now we go. Takes a little. Now, it is a comprehensive policy package of many measures focusing in the context of the European Green Deal, of course, on fighting climate change. So the EU has a new ambitious target to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by at least minus 55% in 2030, always in contrast to the base year of Kyoto, 1990. So far, our policy was quite effective. We have been already reducing our emissions of 40%, around about 40% in the EU as well as in Germany. But there is space for more ambition. And this is now included in this Fit for 55 legislative package that is focusing not only on the energy and industry sectors, but also including transport and household. These are the sectors that are still tricky as well in Germany to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that are still based on combustion of fossil fuels. It is also focusing on the so-called LULUCF sectors. That does mean to incorporate the potential of natural things that are important to compensate those hard-to-abate emissions that we have, especially in the industry and the agricultural sector. So, the political agreement on this package was already agreed last December. Everything is now coming into effect and entering into force since May, and now we are on the way to implement the new regulation in various fields. Of course, the ETS, carbon pricing, is the central pillar of the European policy, and that does mean that the reform of the existing EU ETS that we have working since 2005 will be reformed as well and extended. That does mean to include other sectors. It has, of course, 6 elements that I would like to focus on. The first issue is carbon leakage. That does mean to protect our industry in Europe, especially to achieve a level playing field in the global context. So we will introduce a CBAM, and I will come back to this very soon. We need to reform free allocation. So free allocation, of course, is the central element so far to prevent carbon leakage. But in the future, the amount of free allowances will be reduced because the cap in total will be reduced. So we need a substitute in the future for free allocation. But the central element is that we need to reduce our cap in total to get closer to the Paris Agreement target. Thank you. That's the trick. Sorry about that. And that does mean we need to reduce the cap and also to review our market stability reserve in the context of also price containment. Yeah, we create in the future new funds to use 100% of all the revenues for climate and also social purposes. And we strengthen and create new funds. I will come back to this later for just transition. Yeah, and there are three elements of extending the scope, and on these three issues, aviation, maritime, as well, and the fuel ETS, my colleague Daniel will elaborate as the second part of our common presentation. Okay, now it works. ETS 1. This is the system existing since 2005, covering the sectors energy and industry. And this is a very complex picture, but the first message I would like to send to you is what I already mentioned, that from 2005, this is here the starting year 2008 of the second commitment period, we have been reducing our emissions significantly, almost 40% in the EU 30, but the second message is the cap is higher than the emissions. And this is a wrong picture, of course. In the long run, we want to become net zero down to 2050 in Europe. And you see that as long as the cap is higher than the emissions, then there's not the right incentive to invest on the basis of fair CO2 prices. And now with the Fit for 55 decisions, you see now that the cap will be reduced much more drastically in the future. And this is even also giving a clear price signal already to the market that in the future the market will be more scarce. It does mean that the linear reduction factor will rise from the next year already up to 4.3% per year. Later, 4.5% per year. And this makes a difference in the scheme. Thank you. Okay. So free allocation, basically, it will be capped in the system, but the allocation rules will be tightened, and there will be new incentives also created for faster transition. So we have, as I already mentioned, the introduction of a second element, the CBAM, the carbon adjustment mechanism. I will come back to this very soon. And we will increase the reduction rates for the benchmarks. I think you know what benchmarks are. The benchmarks are the factors that guarantee free allocation for the benchmark products. But the benchmarks will be tightened. They will be focusing on state-of-the-art technology, the top 10 approach, and they are marking the benchmarks for the future. So as more stricter the benchmarks are, less free allocation will be guaranteed. And we have additional conditionalities in the future that all the entities, the plant operators might implement energy management systems. Most of them they already have this, but not on the European level so far. So this is a new incentives for such companies to improve their energy efficiency on the supply side, as well as focusing on the products that they produce for the demand side. And in the event of non-compliance of installations, in this context, the free allocation will be reduced even by 20%. Yeah. The reform of the EU ETS is a very important and major step, but additional issues have to be fulfilled. Very important is that the market surplus that I've showed you in the slide before has to be cancelled. So already in this year, 2.5 billion of allowances have been cancelled to reduce the overbalance from the past. And this is again very important and will be a mechanism year by year to reduce the surplus and to make the market more scarce. Very important is that the use of the revenues will be more targeted in the member states. In Germany, last year, from both emission trading schemes that we implement in Germany, we had a revenue of 13 billion euros, and 100% of that money is going into projects of CO2 emission reduction programs in Germany, also worldwide, including also revenues for our citizens. We have been reducing the electricity cost by 3 € per kilowatt hour. So all our citizens profit from this scheme. Some of the money will now go to the already existing innovation and modernization funds. The innovation fund is for new, radical innovations in the industry. For example, dry technology in the iron and steel industry, shifting from coke to hydrogen, for example. And the modernization fund is a fund that is dedicating specific funding for Eastern European countries. As well, the Repower EU program is a new program for faster expansion of renewables that is, of course, basic for our transition of the industry and to move away from fossil gas. Well, and the national revenues now go 100% for climate protection or relief measures in all member states, and that's really very important. You see, we have a high time pressure now to implement everything into national law and to get ready already now for the next decade, for the 40s. We have to be thinking what will be the follow-up measures already on the European level to think about becoming net zero greenhouse gas climate until 2050 on the European level, and Germany wants to become climate neutral already in 2045. So we think now already about other gases to include other sectors. That is scientific work, and also to integrate sectors that on the European level so far are not part of the scope in Europe in the context of the European ESR regulation. We need to think about the sectors agriculture, household, and of course transport. And for the future, I think I've been mentioning already to think about negative emissions, how to compensate those very hard to abate emissions in the chemical industry sector, for example, or cement and lime, where we have the emissions resulting from raw materials that are then emitted not only in the combination with fossil fuel emissions. Now I would like to come back to the issue I already have mentioned, the future carbon leakage measurement in conjunction with ETS1, the CBAM. What is the basic idea of CBAM? Level playing field, equal CO2 prices for imported and EU manufactured products are the basic industrial materials we are talking about. Not all products are covered in the starting phase. And of course, as mentioned, to protect against carbon leakage, but also to create incentives for climate change mitigation in countries outside the EU. Replacing free allocation is necessary. In the 40s, we are running out of free allocation, and also the total amount of allowances are going down to zero. So we have to think about this problem might resulting, and it has the opportunity also to avoid relocation of industrial production from the EU. The positive impact, so to say, is that gradual phasing out of free allocation will arise auction revenues. Free allocation gives the option to auction allowances at a higher level. And this is, I think, the most important advantage, that we pass on directly the CO2 price signal within the EU. Yeah, and last but not least, and this is very important, also for countries that export a lot of products to the EU, they have now an incentive to introduce their own carbon pricing systems for the industry and strengthening greenhouse gas MRV capacities. This is a lesson that we have learned in Germany already in 2005, that MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification, helps the industry, the plant operators, to learn about their emissions, their energy demand, and to identify fields not only to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but to save energy and money, and to become more productive and more cost efficient. Okay, thank you. What does it mean now, the CBAM for the importers? So, as I have mentioned, we will start with a transitional period already in 2023, in October of this year. This is actually next month. The importers located in the EU, they have the duty to report quarterly the embedded indirect, direct and indirect emissions to the EU Commission. Yes. It's a little tricky. Okay. I would like to come back first to the first slide before that to better understand what is in the scope and what is not. So the general functioning of the CBAM, it will start with the basic industry products. So cement and clinker, iron and steel, aluminium products, fertilizers coming from the chemical industry, but it also includes hydrogen and electricity that is imported to the EU. And the entities covered are the importers. So the importers will be the declarants, and they have to submit reports about the embedded emissions of the imported goods. So this will be a new task for importers because they need to collect the data that they do not have. Yeah, in the starting phase, only the direct emissions and indirect emissions from heat, cooling, or from electricity consumption will be covered for cement and fertilizers, but not for all the other products. So it's getting a little complex in detail. And in the future, they will have to buy and to submit so-called CBAM certificates that also will be have a currency like 1 certificate per ton of CO2. Yeah? And the CBAM obligation is reduced by free allocation in the EU ETS. Of course, the CBAM obligation will be reduced if there will be a carbon price paid in the third country. So if there is a country on the same level of carbon pricing, there is no CBAM obligation. So this is important to understand. Yeah, and it already starts next month, but only reporting. Yeah, and from 2026, so within the next 3 years, we will learn from the system. Then there will be not only the obligation for reporting, but also to buy and to cancel the CBAM certificates. Yeah, and within the same period of time, 26 until 2034, there will be no free allocation for the CBAM products within the EU ETS. So you see the system will be very well balanced to achieve a level playing field between the European countries and countries exporting CBAM goods to the EU. Yeah, and of course, everything will be reviewed, and it is possible to extend the coverage from those products to other products in the future. All right. So the transitional period starts from 2023 until 26, and as I have mentioned, the full operation of CBAM will be in this year. Also, the embedded emissions will be verified by independent third-party verifiers, and the free allocation will be considered as well. Again, very important, the carbon price paid in the third country. Yeah, my last slide. There are chances, but there are also challenges of the CBAM. The chances, free allocation will be significantly reduced in the future. We have the pass on of the CO2 price along the value chain, and we have the incentives to lower greenhouse gas and other relevant emissions during the production process worldwide. This is clear, and it will also enhance transparency for the products, for the consumers. Yeah? They will learn, they already require and ask for low carbon products, and MRV will help also to support this element. Yeah, there are challenges, of course. We need a robust government system and governance structures for implementing CBAM to ensure a fair and equal treatment of all participants. There is international discussions on this issue. Is the CBAM maybe in contradiction to free trade in the global context? So far, our Chancellor Olaf Scholz, he created on the G7 level the idea of a carbon club, of a climate club, of a club of close cooperation of countries and states. And the minister already issued this idea, raised the idea on the Taiwan level. I think this is a good idea to cooperate on this level together. Yeah, and the challenge is the time pressure, as I mentioned. The system needs to be implemented very soon, and Germany is not clear who will be the governmental entity to implement the system, and most likely some of the tasks will also be implemented by the German Emissions Trading Authority. Yeah, and building a robust MRV system and also structures in the countries that are exporting to Europe in such a short time period, this is a challenge. And trade-offs between effective carbon leakage and administrative burden are also very important. We need low administrative efforts to reduce the transaction costs of this system. That's very important target. Thank you, and now I would like to hand over to my colleague, Daniel, focusing on the extension of the scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen. This device is important. Yes, indeed. So I'd like to talk about two major sectors that now will be increasingly covered by the EU ETS, which is the maritime sector first, and then the aviation sector. Starting with maritime, let me see. Yes, that's fine. It is a significant sector when we look at its emissions profile. Globally speaking, the sector is responsible for about 1 billion metric tons of CO2 annually. So that's sizable. That's about 2 to 3% of global emissions. And in the EU, as you can see here, this percentage is even higher. So for the EU, the share is 3 to 4% of the EU's emissions. Number, to be exact, is around 140 million metric tons. So significant size, and also, of course, the prospects are, let's say, serious, because the sector keeps on increasing its emissions. We need to reverse that trend, and of course, in line with the global objectives under the Paris Agreement, but also our European objectives, there's a high need for taking action also on maritime and transport emissions. And so far, we have to concede that action has not been sufficient, neither at the European level nor at the global level. Now, what Europe is trying to do is really to move forward in the carbon pricing space to address this gap. As of 2020, since 2018, we have had a monitoring obligation for certain ship sizes, so for large ships. So we already have a good view on the emissions scope, on the volume of emissions. Operators have had some experience over the past years in the European Union's ETS1 to report emissions, but so far there have not been an obligation to purchase certificates, so there was no carbon price. And that will change as of next year. Globally, we have it's a bit too dark. Globally, we have an IMO GHG strategy that was updated in July this year with enhanced targets but it is not strong enough. I think we need to realize that just relying on the IMO's strategies and objectives will not be enough to reach the targets of the Paris Agreement. So we need to take action in different jurisdictions in Europe is also moving forward here. Now, specifically, what will happen in the EU ETS as of next year? If we look at the geographical scope for maritime emissions to be covered with a carbon pricing obligation, it will be 100% of emissions for voyages between ports of European Union member states, and of course also for voyages within ports of one member state. So that's maybe not surprising. So all the inner and intra-European voyages will be covered at 100%, including also the emissions at berth, so when ships are moored. And that's also important because there we've got, of course, different environmental issues. You know that it's not just CO2 emissions, but also localized air pollution. So it's also important to keep that in mind. What's interesting and probably also of relevance for Taiwan with its big shipping industry is that voyages between European ports and international ports will be covered at 50%. So in a sense, that's kind of a approach of saying, well, we do not want to extend emissions coverage to like 100%. We would hope that other jurisdictions would take their own steps in carbon pricing and cover the remaining 50% of the voyage. But Europe will at least cover, let's say, the second part of the voyage for ships coming into Europe, right? So that's in terms of scope for international traffic. Looking at the gases covered, first, it's going to be only carbon dioxide. And as of 2026, we will include additionally methane emissions as well as emissions of nitrous oxide. Types of ships, initially rather large ships, starting with gross tonnage over 5,000 tons. In 2027, offshore ships as a ship class will be included in addition. And the decisions have not been taken, but there will be a review and decision-making in the future, whether also smaller ships will be included, possibly up to like 500 tons gross tonnage. But so far, that's the decision taken here, so 5,000 tons and above, so the rather big ships. Yes, and in terms of obligations, clearly the monitoring obligation, as we've already had, will be extended, the reporting obligation, and the new thing is that there will be an obligation to purchase and surrender emission certificates corresponding to the emissions that have arisen. But there will be a gradual phase-in, so there will be no free allocation. That's a bit different than what we've had in the past with other sectors. So no free allocation, will be a complete auctioning process or purchase on the secondary market for ship operators. And there will be a gradual phase-in of that obligation to have a smooth transition into that pricing scheme for maritime transport. As you can see on the slide, as of next year, 40% of verified emissions will need to be priced. So for 40% of your reported emissions, the operators will have to purchase allowances. The year after, 2025, it will climb to 70%. And as of 2026, all of the verified emissions will need to be priced and certificates purchased and surrendered. Yes, and so implementing the system is going to be within our remit at the German Emissions Trading Authority. We are gearing up for that. The Commission will actually publish a list in which jurisdiction different ship operators will be regulated, whether they will come under the German jurisdiction and deal with us, with the German Emissions Trading Authority, or whether they will be, for example, in Greece, where also many ship operators are registered. Spain is another big player. So that will be decided at the European Commission level. And we are expecting to cover in Germany about 220 shipping companies with roughly 1,600 ships as of next year. Administrative tasks, Jürgen Landlebe had mentioned that for the CBAM, of course also here, that will be a challenge. We need to assess and approve monitoring plans in order to have a high degree of accuracy on the emissions level. That is in line with the processes we have followed on the stationary side, EU ETS, power plants, other industrial sites. So we have a lot of experience here, but we need to work together, of course, with the shipping companies for this process to come to a good end. So we are a service-oriented agency, and for operators nationally and internationally, we are of course also available to guide them through the process, and we are publishing on our website also supporting documents, guidelines to, in a sense, lend them a hand in that sometimes complex process of emissions monitoring at a high degree of accuracy. Yes, there internally we've already established an expert group on maritime transport. There's a new section being created actually in my department called shipping. No surprise. So we'll have a new team established and taking on that task starting early next year, as I said. Of course, IT infrastructure, registry, all of these things you don't have to worry about. It's our task to worry about. But of course, speaking about capacity building, if and as Taiwan is thinking about introducing carbon pricing systems, maybe of the ETS type, we are certainly also there to share our experience with these administrative challenges and also experiences in terms of IT systems and all the different aspects that you need to manage in order to run such a system. Fine. So that's gonna come. And now let me turn to the second sector, which is also, of course, of high importance, which is aviation. Interestingly, its emissions at the global level are similar to the global shipping sector. It's just by coincidence. So again, about 1 billion metric tons of annual CO2 emissions, same percentage globally then. But, and I will come to that point in a minute, the aviation sector probably is of even higher concern because its dynamism for increasing emissions now post-COVID is strong. It's picking up again. And there's another aspect, and as I said, I will come just in a minute to it, which are climate forcing effects beyond CO2. It's the non-CO2 effects of air transport, which are significant, really significant, and which gradually will be addressed in the EU ETS 1. So the figure is here on the screen, about 70 million metric tons of annual CO2 emissions in the EU ETS, and I just outlined that the increase is expected to be significant. Here's just a quick recap of measures that have been taken at the European level for that sector. In 2010, we started with an MRV system, actually a bit similar to what we've done in the shipping sector, but that started earlier, 2010. In 2012, we established an obligation to surrender EEA certificates, so basically to start with carbon pricing that became operational in 2012. But at a rather high share of free allocation in order to not to overburden the sector, but of course, let's speak openly here, that was of course also due to industry pressures that a high share of certificates were given out for free. This is not the gold standard when we think about incentives for emissions reductions, but it was a political compromise to start at 85% free allocation, and that will be reduced strongly as we look forward. So again, development in the system, making it become, let's say, perform better when it comes to its incentive structure, but also when it comes to generating public funds. My colleague Jürgen Landry spoke to it. You can only distribute funds if you first auction the certificates. If you hand them out, basically you're handing out the value of the certificates to businesses, and you don't have control over that value to distribute back to industry and to citizens in a very targeted way. So that's a very important aspect to consider when you think about carbon pricing mechanisms in the Taiwan context, for example. In 2019, we started to implement ICAO's CORSIA scheme, so the carbon offsetting and reduction scheme for international aviation. An important international initiative, although not strong when it comes to its ambition, not strong enough, at least at this stage, to really decarbonize the aviation sector. We still take part in the CORSIA process. We hope also to advance the process. We take part in the ICAO structures together with the responsible ministry in Germany. So we hope that the CORSIA can be strengthened over time. So we are cooperating, we are engaging with CORSIA, but it is, let's say, one component, and we are at the same time, the European Union is at the same time focusing on strengthening the ETS that we have, which operates at a much higher stringency than CORSIA is at the moment. In terms of the European landscape, we have linked the EU ETS with the Swiss ETS, also for air transport, and more recently with the Brexit. Sadly, we have, of course, also had to respond to the Brexit. We have linked up EU ETS with the UK ETS. Now, just some more details on what's going to happen in the aviation sector as of next year. So that free allocation, which started at 85%, and I just made some comments on that, will be reduced as of next year to 75%. Year after, in 2025, it will be down to 50%, and we will have a full auctioning of emissions allowances in the aviation sector as of 2026. So no more free allocation, meaning more public revenue in the auction results for targeted programs. On top of that, there will be under a new program 20 million allowances given. Actually, that's in a certain way, that's another free allocation, but very targeted one, for the use of sustainable aviation fuels. So basically low or no carbon fuels, which of course we need to incentivize, because our perspective in Europe, and certainly the German Emissions Trading Authority, is that the pathway for the global aviation sector should not be a big offset scheme where you just pay others for emissions reductions, but you need to physically decarbonize your sector. So the operation itself of taking an airplane needs to be decarbonized. And this is why sustainable aviation fuels are such an important part of the answer. And Europe is incentivizing that ramp up of SAFs, as we abbreviate them, by offering 20 million allowances that then will be handed out to those operators who are using sustainable aviation fuels. And that's a subsidy at current carbon prices amounting to roughly 1.7 billion euros. So it's a sizable amount that will be injected over the coming years to drive the development of sustainable aviation fuels. This extra allowance will not broaden or increase the cap, it will be deducted from the cap. So basically we have not an additional increase in emissions by adding these allowances or giving them away. So that's taken care of. The CORSIA rules are also going to be implemented alongside the EU ETS. So maybe it's a little bit complicated, but to try to explain as simple as I can. And for the flights within Europe, we only have the ETS. So there's no CORSIA obligation. And CORSIA kicks in for the international flights, the international routes. And for these routes, there can be actually a double obligation. It's maybe not ideal, but that's the way we have it. There's an obligation under the EU ETS, also in part to surrender allowances, to really be part of that system. And there's the CORSIA obligation. So for operators, we understand this may be a certain challenge, but that's the way we have it. We have, in a sense, for international flights, two systems that operate to a certain degree in parallel. There will be a re-evaluation of CORSIA in 2026 by the EU Commission. Now, my last slide in this presentation, and now I come to the big finale. I mentioned that the aviation sector is an important emission source. Remember, roughly 1 billion metric tons of CO2 per year, but that's not all. And in fact, the non-CO2 effects are roughly 3 times bigger than the CO2 climate forcing alone. So we must not only look at CO2 for aviation, we also must look at the non-CO2 effects. Very important. And actually, I can openly say we are also a little bit proud of that. We spearheaded research over the past years on a scientific assessment of non-CO2 effects. because they vary on flight parameters, on atmospheric conditions. It's not just one hard factor that you multiply the CO2 emissions with, and you have the non-CO2 effects, but you need to assess multiple parameters of each flight in order to get a good approximation of the non-CO2 effects. And so we worked with the German Institute for Aerospace Research, in that instance, where they've got atmospheric science modeling, to come up with a model that is looking at these parameters to give you flight per flight the non-CO2 effects. And we worked with the Commission to explain that this is a very important blind spot so far on the emissions picture, and that it should be, or we recommended at least, that it should be included in the ETS reform going forward. And the conclusion is that we were successful in that. It was being taken up by European policymakers, and we now have an MRV system first, starting in 2025, where the non-CO2 effects will need to be reported. At this stage, there's no obligation yet to buy emissions allowances for that part. There will be a re-evaluation in 2027, I think, yes. And we expect that after 2027, also there will be a pricing obligation on the non-CO2 effects. But we consider this a very important step in the right direction, science-based, and it should also hopefully extend beyond the EU ETS to CORSIA and maybe also to other schemes that may emerge over time. So this concludes my two, let's say, sector focuses. And let me just also on behalf of my colleagues' initial presentation, my, let's say, sector insights, just to conclude here with one slide on the Fit for 55 package. We see it as a key strengthening of emissions trading as really the most important climate protection instrument at the EU level. You spoke to the significant reduction of the cap in the EU ETS1, which will be tightened to minus 62%, and that's under 2005 figures. So really a very steep reduction, and that's for 2030. So you remember, by the way, maybe that was not mentioned, but Fit for 55 means 55% European level emissions reduction in the year 2030 below 1990. That's why all these policy packages are gearing up towards the target for the end of this decade. So it's for the next 7 years that these policies are being developed and implemented. So one key element is the reduction of the cap in ETS1. I gave you a little insight into the expansion of emissions trading to maritime emissions. Carbon border adjustment mechanism was explained to gradually replace the free allocation and to offer, and I really want to stress this point once again, the perspective for increased cooperation on carbon pricing on the international level. I tell you, we don't want to implement the CBAM obligation. We want to see others, Taiwan, other jurisdictions, countries, to go forward with carbon pricing themselves. Ideally, no one would have to buy a CBAM certificate. It would be perfect if we could motivate others, in a sense, joining that call for enhanced carbon pricing globally. After the lunch break, Jürgen Landgräbe will speak about a new ETS2 on the transport and heating sector. It's another key policy element in the Fit for 55 package that will be an upstream system, so all the details will come after the break in the presentation after lunch. But with that, we hope that we have given you an insight on really what it means, this Fit for 55 package, and that it can really be seen as a transformative policy change if we look ahead. So with this, we would like to thank you, and I'm passing on the microphone to Dr. Wei-Ming Huang. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daniel and Dr. Norman, for your wonderful presentations. Let us look forward to their presentations after lunch break this afternoon as well. 那么非常感谢我们以上2位讲者的分享，让我们也一起期待他们今天下午的简报。那么接下来呢，诚如刚刚 Dr. Daniel 所提到的，我们的主题呢是台湾气候政策与碳定价规划。 Coming up next, our topic will be Taiwan's climate policy and carbon pricing plan. It's our honor to invite the Deputy Director General of Climate Change Administration of the Ministry of Environment, Dr. 黄伟明。那么很荣幸邀请到的讲者呢是环境部气候变迁署副署长黄伟明，黄副署长，请掌声欢迎黄副署长。
Thank you. Allow me speaking in policy and carbon pricing. 今天我大概会分成3个主题来跟大家做一个介绍。台湾2050呢，净零排放的是在2021年由总统来宣布。那大部分国家我们会跟台湾愿意跟全球同步来共同推动这个净零的一个工作。在这过去2年来，我们做了相当多的功课，做了相当多的改变让我依序来跟大家做介绍。这个是台湾的主要的排放路径，目前台湾的排放量大概维持在每一年大概在2亿7千万吨的二氧化碳排放量，呈现一个稳定的一个排放趋势，但是我们希望它能够持续的往下消减。那因此呢，我们也订定了5年为一期的目标，每隔5年我们检讨一次，我们称它是一个阶段的管制目标。那我们在2020年的时候，希望能够相对于2005年能够减2%，就2%，然後2025年能够减10%。2030年我们重新检讨以后，我们希望能够增加我们的 ambition， 能够达到就是相对于2005年23%到25% 的这样的一个消减量。那这样的一个消减量，我们希望逐步的运用这样的一个机制，能够达到2050净零排放。那大家可能会说，我们的2030年减23%到25% 不够具有 ambition 了。在我们过去研定的过程中，各界也有不同的看法。可是我们如果来看邻近几个国家他们的宣布，其实包含日本大概是相较于2005年大概是减41到46，的确日本是减得比我们更加的有雄心壮志。但是相较于韩国来讲，韩国如果依照它的排放量，那在2030年它是削减了14%。其实削减的幅度相较于台湾来讲，我们还胜过韩国。那更不要说其他的亚洲国家。所以其实我们这样的一个目标，对我们来讲，不单是展现了我们的企图心，但是也代表了我们减碳的一些困难。那在这样的一个 Net Zero 的目标下，我们其实提出了12项的关键战略。大家可以看得到，我们大部分的关键战略着重在我们的这个能源部分，从风能、氢能、创新能源、储能系统到节约能源等等。当然，我们也注意到说，我们可能还会使用一些化石燃料，所以我们也发展了 CCUS 的一个技术。那对运具方面，我们需要有电动化的运具。那此外，我们可以资源回收，甚至所谓的 nature-based solution， 就是 carbon sink 的部分。还有，我们也需要促成全民的生活转型 （green lifestyle）。最重要，我们还有融入了我们的绿色金融。那在第12项关键战略里面，我们特别强调 just transition， 这对我们来讲，对我们关注到任何的减碳工作的改变，以及我们推动工作，必须注意到巴黎协定里面所提到的，要尊重大家的这个工作环境以及有尊严的工作。我们担心推动这样的一个减碳工作，其实对部分的人会造成冲击。所以在我们这12项的关键战略里面，特别着重在这个 just transition 的部分。这是我们针对2050年Pathway 所做的milestone。我们有针对分别从建筑物、运输、industry 跟那个电力的部分， 分阶段订定我们的目标，希望能够在这样的一个目标下呢，逐渐达成这个净零排放。那接下来我从里面摘录出几个关键的一个目标跟大家做分享。首先是在这个能源转型的部分，我们希望2050的电力呢的结构，那我们大概推动的就是离岸的这个风电，然后太阳光电，然后地热等等这样的一个目标去堆叠。因此，我们包含要扩展我们离岸的风电的一个装置容量，同时要扩大我们的太阳光电的使用量。那最后我们希望能够达到的是2050年，再生能源能够占我们的电力结构系统里面大概是在60%到70%。那氢能呢会是9到12%。然后当然我们还可能会留下一点这个天然气的部分，那这时候可能要仰赖我们 CCS 的这样的一个制度，来把这样的一个电力供应能够做一个稳定的一个供应。这是我们在面对2050净零的时候，我们电力系所所提出来的一个方向。那另外一个就是各界所关心的，其实除了电力供应以外，其实对于运输系统来讲，对我们来讲也是一个重大的挑战。我们可以了解到说，我们很想要发展我们能够电气化的电动化的一个车辆，但是我们也考虑到目前我们的公共设施，我们的这些技术发展可能包含我们自己制造电动车辆的部分的能力都还有待提升。所以，我们对于这样的一个目标的一个设定呢，其实我们有做相对应的调整，特别是针对台湾的一个环境。因此呢，我们先设定了2030年，我们希望我们的市区的巴士跟政府部门的公共的车辆能够100%能够电动化，这是我们初步的一个目标。我们需要由公部门来带动这样一个电动化的一个趋势。那未来大家可能在2030年就可以看到我们的市区公车呢，都已经电动化。这是我们设定的一个目标。那各界所关切的其实是比较关切是后面这2个。那因此我们设定的时间的确是比德国稍微晚一点，我们设到2040年。这也是考虑到台湾的一些情况，所以我们设到2040年才会是100%的一个电动化。那对于刚才所介绍12项关键战略里面有一项就是加设全人群的部分，所以这对台湾来讲也是非常重要的一个课题。那这里面要考虑的面向非常多，但是我只举一个例子各位可能都会关注到，其实在我们推动减碳过程中最重要的一个课题，其实是一个车辆的问题。那车辆问题里面就会讨论到台湾特有的情况，就是我们有很多的摩托车。这摩托车其实也维持了很多家庭的一个生计，不单单是骑车的人，还包含修车的人。那因此我们在推动这样的一个净零工作里面，这个加设全人群其实就必须要考虑到这个面向。因此我们组成了一个跨部会的一个工作小组。那这样的一个工作小组，我们的出发点其实就是如同前报所说的。我们是认为这个就是巴黎协定的一个重要一个精神。那因此呢，台湾有超过1400万的摩托车，那仅有4%是电动化。那我们也希望能够到2030年到10%。可是这样的一个目标设定，其实可能就会冲击到既有的摩托车行的这个维修的这个生意所以在这2年内，其实经济部他提出了将近2亿美金的一个计划，要在2023年到2026年提升这样的摩托车行维修电动车的能力。他希望能够到2026年的时候，能够有80%的这个摩托车行呢都能够开始维修电动车。那这样的一个目的也是希望能够解决目前现阶段我们仰赖这个汽油摩托车的这个情况，希望有一天能够改变成电动化。那这在我们公正转型里面，这个是我们的首要课题。也许我们不像德国一样，它在公正转型里面可能面对的是 煤矿的问题，我们是摩洛测的问题，那这个问题也是目前正在处理当中。接下来跟大家介绍是第二个单元，就是有关我们的组织改变跟我们的法制的这个 reform。同样的包含德国的像欧盟的 EU ETS 一样都会有 reform， 我们也是一样，我们在法规上会做 reform， 我们的组织也做了 reform。首先呢是在今年的8月22号，因为气候变迁的议题，体认到这样的一个工作的一个严峻，所以环境部在8月22号成立。那环境部在成立的时候呢，不单单是成立了气候变迁署其实我们还同时成立了资源循环署，以及我们还成立了国家环境研究院。那这几个组织其实基本上就是为了气候变迁来设置的专门的一个机构，包含一个政府单位。我们希望借由这样的一个组织来带动整个组织的因应气候变迁的一个能力。那接下来跟大家介绍，在我们这个Climate Change Administration 里面的组织最主要的一个工作呢，我们分成5个 division 包含 Net Zero Emission 跟 Emission Management 跟 Emission Reduction and Trading Division， 还有 Adaptation 跟 Resilience Division， 还有 Carbon Free Promotion Division。其实大家可以看得到，我们最主要的工作其实建构在这3个这个 division， 其实都是跟我们希望能够实施碳定价有关。这 carbon pricing 的这个制度，基本上是我们整个组织运作的一个很重要的一个关键。诚如刚才几位讲者所讲，其实他们也希望说 carbon pricing 能够扩展到全世界，让大家知道排碳有价的这样的一个想法。对我们来讲，我们也希望让台湾了解台湾国内的各产业以及我们所有的人民都了解到说，其实我们要为这个排碳的做出行动特别我们采用这样 carbon pricing 的一个制度。那除了组织改变以外，我们的法规也做了改变。我们将我们原来的比较局限的 greenhouse gas reduction 跟 and management aid， 然后我们是 amend to the climate change response aid， 那涵盖的面向扩展。刚才市长也特别有提到这样的一个，我们最主要是 focus 在 net zero emission by 2050。那2050净零排放纳在我们的法规里面直接入法，要求国家长期目标就是2050净零。那这样的一个工作，大概是少数几个国家里面能够用法律来规范。那我们在当时在统计的时候，大概是8个国家将这个 net zero emission 的 target 放在我们的法规里面。那我们希望能够强化这个在原来面对气候变迁的冲击，所以我们特别在我们这部法案里面设计的这个调试的一个专章，希望能够扩增无论是中央政府或地方政府在因应气候变迁的一个能力。那同时我们修正了加强，希望能够加强这个加速我们的气候的这个carbon emission 的 reduction， 然后同时我们会引进碳费的制度。那对于大家所关切的，不论是公众的参与或者是一些训练，都在我们的法规里面来做相对应的规范。不可讳言的，气候变迁议题涉及到相当多的一个部会，单独靠环境部来负责主导这样的一个工作，同样都会发生协调上的问题。所以在这一次我们修法里面，特别引用环境基本法的要求，我们要求国家永续发展委员会来负责协调跟整合国家的气候政策，而这样的一个组织呢，是设置在我们的行政院里面，由行政院成立这样的一个组织来专门负责协调跨部会的其他工作，这样也可以解决过去大家总认为环境议题容易被大家所忽略，但是有这样的一个组织，类似那个 组成一个由院长来主持的这样的一个会议，可以解决部会之间的歧见。那在这样的一个架构下，我们分成两个主轴，在行政部门上做要求。第一个，我们是要求每隔5年来检讨我们的减量成果，包含中央跟地方都要撰写你自己的减量的计划，然后送交环境部来做统整。那除了减量工作以外，其实更重要的工作其实是调试的部分。但过去我们对调试工作的一个掌握，其实并不是那么的清楚，特别是在地方政府。那我们这一次修法以后呢，要求地方政府也要去提出他们的这个执行的一个计划。那这样的一个执行计划内容，针对他自己本身的气候变迁冲击的情况来做准备。那送交也是一样送到环境部来做同样的这个准备跟审核。那我们希望藉由这样的一个机制，不论是从减量的机制跟调试的机制来建构台湾完整的因应气候变迁的行政部门的一个机制。第3个单元就要谈到我们在这样的一个组织改变跟我们的法规治理后，我们有一个很重要的一个课题，就是 carbon pricing。那这个 carbon pricing 的这个制度呢，在我们的法规里面呢，其实我们总共定有几个机制啊，都可能会跟 carbon pricing 有点相关。那第一个呢，就是我们要求我们的这个产业盘查申报呢，必须要依照它排放量来做申报，同时经过 MRV 的一个机制来确保它的一个排放量。那我们同样在法规里面，我们未来可以有机会去订定这个类似 emission standard 的要求，包含在我们的建筑物，包含在我们的这个车辆上面，我们会做更进一步的这个效能标准的一个要求。那同时呢，我们对于产品方面，我们也要求来订定所谓的碳足迹的一个机制。希望能够利用产品标示碳足迹的方式，鼓励消费者选择比较低碳排放的一个产品。此外呢，在这个部分呢，在右半边的部分呢，我们有设计一个 voluntary 的 offset trading， 这个是比照联合国监督毅力书的机制，也就是所谓的 CDM 的机制，我们设立了我们的这个 voluntary 的 offset trading。希望用这个方式也能够让大家知道这个投入减碳工作以及创造更多的跟碳定价连结的一个方式。那此外呢，这个是在我们所有的新增开发案的时候呢，我们会要求新设排放源呢，它必须来扣抵它自己的排放的一个增量。那这个制度的确是基本上应该是台湾特有的一个制度了，因为我们不希望新设的一些大型的一个产业呢，它的排放增量对我们整个环境有影响，因此我们要求排放经过在环境影响评估审查的时候呢，我们要求它应该要提出计划，怎么去减少它的温室气排放量。那主管机关呢会要求设定一定的比例的一个要求它要达成它的减量。那最后一个工作项目呢，就是我们要征收这个 carbon fee。那我们这个 carbon fee 的制度呢是属于专款专用，然后特别是特别功课，这个是在我们现在现阶段主要的针对碳定价的部分，我们正在积极做这样的一个工作。接下来跟大家介绍要征收这个碳定价的这个制度，我们仰赖的是什么？我们仰赖的其实是我们的排放量的一个资料。那我们排放量的资料呢，其实就需要我们有很好的一个排放的一个申报制度跟一个查验的一个制度。过去这几年，我们曾经也跟德国这边有做过交流，我们知道这个有关排放量 MRV 的制度是非常重要的，所以我们一直在做检视跟要求我们自己的这样的一个制度。那首先来看我们在 改进我们排放量申报的一个制度，我们要求，如果你这个企业的年排放量每年达25000吨以上的话，就要跟环境部来做申报。那这样的一个申报呢，刚开始我们第一阶段要求的是直接的部分。那现在呢，我们在去年8月的时候要求，无论你是直接或间接加起来，每年超过25000吨，都要跟环境部申报。那我们最新的规定呢，要求呢，它必须在每一年的4月30号之前，先把他自己统计好的资料提给环境部，然后他还可以再找第三方的查验机构来进行查验。因此，他在每一年的10月31号之前完成这个查验机制。因此，这样的一个机制呢，可以让产业了解到自己的排放情况，同时要求这个第三方的查验机制来进行这个查验确保它的品质无误。这个是我们最新的一个规定。那这样的一个规定呢，我们要求的这个气体呢，要统计的资料呢，其实是包含了京都议定书要求的7种温室气体。不单单只有 carbon dioxide， 那我们其他的这几个温室气体都需要申报。那申报的业者呢，除了直接排放的要申报，包含它用电排放的量也要进行申报，所以它是2个部分都要申报。那在2022年的时候呢，目前大概有500家的企业是受到我们这样制度的一个规范。那在这个制度规范呢，到目前为止，他们的排放量，如果只算直接的排放量的话，就是direct emission from fossil fuel combustion 的部分，大概是2亿2000多万的 carbon dioxide， 那差不多占台湾的75%的排放量。也就是说，我们这样的一个制度的一个申报制度的一个建立呢，其实已经能够让企业大的排放源知道它的排放情况，也让台湾政府部门能够充分掌握他们的这个排放现况。当然，除了排放现况的掌握以外，我们更重要的是需要有第三方查验机构来进行verify。怎么样去做这样的一个机制呢？台湾目前呢，其实有14个这个查验机构能够来做这样的事。我们也是不断的在训练相关的人员，能够有这样的能力来进行这个查验工作。那到2022年，我们大概训练了270位的专业的一个人士经过，所以能够来进行这样的一个能力。那未来呢，我们还是会持续的精进这样的一个查验量呢，来让我们这样的一个制度能够精准的一个掌握各个排放情况。刚才有提到我们有做一个 voluntary 的这个reduction project， 这个是基本上是参考清洁方案 CDM 的一个做法。那我们从2010年开始执行，到目前为止，我们大概花了大概2300多万吨的carbon dioxide 的这样的一个 reduction。那这样的一个制度呢，我们最主要是建立的methodology， 我们有这样的一个方法学，因此呢，我们主要是参考了 CDM 的200多种的一个 methodology， 再加上我们自己 domestic 自己因为台湾特有的状况，我们所设定的这样的一个方法学，所以加起来大概有250种方法学，让业者可以来提出这样的一个减碳工作的一个申请。那过去期间呢，总共有93个计划提出来。那经过我们通过以后呢，目前有在核发这个减量的额度，大概有25个计划，25个计划持续进行中。那主要的大部分是着重在 emission improvement， 就是效率提升的部分跟再生能源的部分，这个量是比较多的。那不过后续上面我们可能会加强更多，希望能够在 nature-based solution， 就是所谓的指数的上面的议题，也许是我们需要再进一步关切的一个课题。接下来要跟大家介绍的是碳费的一个制度。 碳费的制度在我们的气候变迁因应法里面有多项条文都跟这个carbon fee 有关。那这个 carbon fee 首先呢，收起来的这个征收的所得，我们会成立一个这个温室气体基金呢，greenhouse gas fund， 这个是 for 这个用这方，就是专款专用的一个，我们就是用在这个温室气体减量工作上面的一个基金。那这个基金呢，我们有几个功能其实跟刚才德邦专家所讲的一样，我们也希望能够用在这个相关的减碳技术的提升、创新技术的提升，甚至在节约能源效果上面的相关的鼓励等等。这个也是我们设计的，我们总共设计的13项的一个目的，希望这个征收的这个费用能够专门来做这样的工作。那这个工作不会进到我们的国家的这个国库去统一使用，而是一定是专门在 for 这个气候变迁课题。那这样的一个制度呢，我们目前设计的是这样子，我们希望能够用就是碳费的制度能够依照排放量的多寡来征收。那也就是刚才跟大家介绍，我们这个排放量的申报制度对我们来讲很重要，我们是要 based on 这样的一个申报制度来收我们的碳费。那我们初步估计，这样的一个征收包含是着重在我们的这个大的排放源，然后呢，征收的时候呢，我们会考虑到这样的一个，它征收的排放量必须包含它自己本身直接跟间接的排放量，这都是我们计费的一个基础。此外，这样的一个费率呢，碳费的费率，我们会成立一个碳费委员会审议会来重新定期的检讨这样的一个费率。那为了鼓励大家进行减碳，我们其实在我们的气候变迁因应法里面又设计了一个条文。这个条文的目的呢，是有点仿效英国的制度。也就是说，如果说你减碳的工作呢，可以跟政府提出一个长期的一个比较稍微长期的目标，譬如说你能够提出2030年的一个减量计划，而这个减量计划呢，来确定它真的可以达到的话，我们会给它比较低的这个费率。这样给比较低的费率来鼓励他把原来应该交给政府的这个碳费留在他自己身上来自行减量。那这样的一个制度设计呢，也是希望说促成产业能够自发自主，在这样碳费制度下来进行相关的减碳工作。那此外呢，我们也允许使用，如果过去你有做这个 voluntary 的这个 credit 的制度，那这个制度产生的这个 credit 能够来抵消你原来缴交的这个碳费。那底下用这张图来跟大家做介绍，就是有关碳费跟这个自愿减量的这个部分呢，基本上都由环境部这边来负责。那我们目前呢，预计这样征收的对象，说依照我们的规划，大概有将近有500家的一个业者需要缴交这样的一个碳费。那碳费制度包含这500家的这个业者呢，他必须跟环境部来申请，来缴交这个碳费。但是如果他过去有做过他有取得这个低碳的这些燃料或改善能源效率等等的这个 credit， 是可以来抵他原来缴的碳费。那我们等于是用 carbon fee 加上这个monetary 的carbon credit 的这样的一个制度呢，来运作我们现阶段初期的这个carbon pricing 的一个制度。那这个制度当然呢，大家也会认为说，是不是有一天会实施我们的所谓的 cap and trade ETS， 在我们的气候变迁因应法里面一样有给予环境部可以启动这个cap and trade 的这个制度。不过也诚如刚才演讲者所说，其实我们在面对 特别是面对欧盟的这个 CBAM 的这样的一个制度。因为国际形势变化的非常快，所以我们在修法的过程中，其实大家认为优先启动碳费制度，比较能够让国内的产业知道排碳有价。同时在因应 CBAM 的时候，我们有比较明确的一个方向可以来做准备，比我们再重新规划这个Cap and Trade 来讲 ，Cap and Trade 要准备的工作更多，而且我们也曾经跟英国的专家也讨论过类似这样的问题，我们还需要一点时间去准备这样实施全面性的 Cap and Trade， 所以我们现阶段先以 Carbon Fee 加上 Voluntary Carbon Credit 的这样的一个制度来运作我们的 Carbon Pricing。对于未来的合作来讲，我们很清楚知道欧盟跟德国在 Carbon Pricing 甚至在气候政策上的制度，其实在全世界都是值得学习的。那不论是刚刚所介绍的这个 ETS 的制度，或者是在像是能源、像在车辆等等这些制度，都值得我们后续上面再继续交流学习。那过去呢，我们跟德方的这几个交流，特别是从对于加强这个 MRV 制度还有 Carbon Pricing 制度，其实对我们来讲，在我们设计制度上面来讲，都有一些都有蛮多的一些帮助，所以我们希望能够后续能够在发展这样的能力建构上面呢，特别是在这种区域发展上面的能力建构上面，是可以加强更多的合作。那特别是以台湾目前所规划出来的这个碳费制度跟这个交易的这些做法，我们也希望能够后续呢，能够跟亚洲地区的共同来针对这个碳定价一起合作。那也当然更希望跟德方能够有更多的一个机会来就这个议题上面进行更多的连结跟讨论。以上是我今天的简报，谢谢大家。
谢谢黄副署长精彩的简报 ，Thank you, Dr. Huang。那么各位贵宾，接下来是午餐时间，下午的论坛预计于1点半时开始。谢谢大家 ，Ladies and gentlemen, we will。Yes, this is a great proposal. We will now have a Q&A, question and answers time. 那我们现在就进入 Q&A 的时间了。那我们有请。
因为我们上午的这个就是活动讲者把时间稍微精简一下，所以我们有10分钟的时间。那我想，因为我们上午安排的是叫政策上的气候政策上的讨论所以我们是不是有这个10分钟的时间，我们在做？如果各位对于包括我们 Yoga 或者是 Daniel 上面的这个就是简报，或者是我们黄副署长的简报，有这个现在可以提出来，我想是不是也可以有一个简单的这个讨论那我们预计是12点再开始，大家中午休息那是不是我们现场我们是开放2个那个有意见可以提出来交流的，针对气候政策的部分那我们下午会有比较多的有关这个碳定价的讨论。那是不是请您先简要说一下您的单位跟这个？
各位大家好，我是台湾大学资工系的教授。那我想请教黄副署长刚刚有提到一件事情，我非常好奇，就是说我们怎么样能够鼓励消费者去买比较低碳的产品？
好，那是不是我们另外再一个问题？
大家好，我是那个野生化工业协会陈学怡。我想请问一下黄副署长，就是说关于关税，没有错。就是关于那个关税跟那个碳费跟碳税的问题就是说不晓得现在 环境部有什么样的规划，然后这个后面的思考逻辑是怎么样？就是碳费跟碳税
做活动的一个记录，
那
有安
我想我们
排。
两个问题，因为我们今天下午也有安排这个中的讨论哈。那上午两个问题，第一个就是有关如何去鼓励更多的这个就是低碳的这个就是这个进行转型在低碳的这个过程。那除了我们黄副署长回答之外，我想等一下也许我们也可以是不是邀请我们就是这个Dr. Yoga 来跟我们这个来跟分享一下德国的做法就是有关这个低碳的这个促进低碳的这个民众的消费的这个事情。那另外呢，这个第二题就有关碳费跟碳税，就请我们黄副来做一个回应，好不好？那先请黄副署长。
就有关第一个问题的部分，其实我们在面对气候变迁，我们其实有推动一个净零绿生活的一个工作，它其实是全面性的。那这个其实最重要就是要把相关的资讯揭露，让民众了解，才能进行下一阶段的一个选择。那因此呢，在我们气候变迁应法里面有一条，刚才我的简报有跟大家介绍，我们希望能够做到对某些产品，特别是跟消费者比较有关的产品，能够做碳足迹的一个标示。而这个足迹的标示不在于这个数字，而在于利用让消费者能够清楚辨识。因此，如何利用颜色深浅来让民众能够选择说，我们构想是颜色比较浅的，这样代表比较绿色的产品，能够在选择的时候让消费者方便辨识，这是我们目前正在努力的一个工作。但是这项工作其实不是非常容易达成。第一个，你要先把所有的这个相关产品的这个排放资料能够完整的掌握揭露，然后同时进行比较。这个同时还分国内外产品。那国外产品的部分也要做努力，因为国外从国外来，它一定比我们的碳足迹国内生产碳足迹要高。所以像这样的一个问题，我们也还在努力。这是我们气候变迁应法的一个给我们的一个方向，让我们可以做这样的一个工作。那第二个有关于碳税跟碳费的部分，碳费是依照这个气候变迁应法来做征收，那碳费的使用是专款专用，用在减碳的工作上面。那碳费，那碳税的部分呢，依照宪法的规定呢，税的部分是由财政部来征收，所以财政部征收的这个税呢，基本上是统收统支，就不是指定在专款专用在气候变迁上面课题。那税的征收其实还有牵扯到更多的问题，包含我们很多税制要重新做调整。可能在面对气候变迁这个议题上面，我刚才特别提到，在面对像欧盟 CBAM 的这个议题上面，税制的重新再改革的这个步伐，可能在因上面也需要再斟酌。所以我们在修法过程中，各界共识是认为先征收碳费的话，环境部来征收以后，专款专用气候变迁的议题。
May I have Jordan to share your experience and how Germany to improve the low carbon society or the implementation in Germany?
Thank you for that excellent question. Of course, it is a question of public awareness. So I think it's very important also to think about education. That you should teach our citizens that low carbon products are smart and help the society. And I would say there is already a natural interest of our citizens to ask and to require low carbon products. And in general, thinking about food, they are more healthy, more tasty at the same time. And the regulation, of course, and this is the main element of our presentation, to put a price on carbon products, to impose a price on CO2 emissions embedded in the products. And this makes the low or zero carbon products more competitive. That's of course our governmental mechanism, but now our younger generations, they ask for low carbon products, also thinking about the transport sector. So now the electric cars, also the scooters are very interesting for the young generation, and you can support, of course, those products by specific funding, and I will come back to this issue in my second presentation after lunch. But I would also like to raise a question to the excellent presentation of Mr. Wang. Thank you. The question I would like to raise is considering, oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Of course, we need a little time for that. But first, I would like to thank you, Mr. Wang, for your excellent presentation, because this is the evidence of our constructive collaboration and exchange of information for so many years, because we already have a common ground of good understanding. But my question to your presentation is related to the voluntary scheme. You were elaborating on entities that are not covered by the carbon fee, and they could create projects, and then there would be credits issued. So
有关这个额度的抵换，就是碳费的使用，我们的主要的这个，首先的最重要还是以国内的 domestic 的为主，但是法规里面是允许我们使用国外的这个 voluntary carbon market 的 credit， 不过这个我们需要去订定相关的认可准则。而这样的一个制度，其实短期内不容易完成，所以我们还是以国内的为优先。
那其实我们今天上午是针对就是德方跟这个台湾目前在进行的气候政策来做这个简报跟交流。那其实下午呢，我们会有更重要的议题要讨论包括我们2位专家会来跟大家分享德国在这个，因为我们刚刚也听到他们会在运输还有驻商的部门的怎么样子去加大这个碳定价，然后来扩大这个减碳的这样一个工作。那另外他们也有一份东亚跟南亚碳定价潜力的一个报告，然后呢我们也邀请到我们几位这个就是专家老师跟这个产业界要来跟大家就这个碳定价的议题来进行。我们今天上午的这个论坛先进行到这边，那我们中午休息到我帮司仪讲了啦我们就休息到30分好，谢谢。那是不是还是麻烦你再讲一下？
是，但是诚如我们蔡署长帮忙我已经帮我讲好了，我们午餐时间呢休息到1点半，那请大家1点半的时候回到我们的会议室，谢谢大家。And just like what Dr. Tai just said for me, our lunch break is until 1:30 p.m. So please return to the conference room at 1:30 p.m. Thank you very much.